And good evening, everybody. Welcome to our show tonight. Going to be, well, Friday TGIF. I got to tell you, it's a welcome night. I'll tell you that. I can't believe how absolutely, utterly, completely tired I get during the day, and it seems like right before I'm going to go on the air, I close my eyes and I'm off. So it must be just all the excitement. But I want to welcome all of you and thank all of you for being with us, not only tonight, but, all the time, on especially our last 4 shows, or last 3 shows, and tonight is the last one. My guest host will be with us in a little while, Ted Gunderson, and I'm still waiting to hear if we can get one individual on with us. We're going to have Noreen Gosch back on because I want to see if Noreen has any comments, any suggestions, just any good words for us, because it's got to be just so hard on that woman. And in addition to that, the individual, and I talked to him today, I guess it's okay if I use the name, he doesn't know if he can come on or not. His attorney has advised him not to, and that is Rusty Nelson. Rusty Nelson is the photographer, or the former photographer. He is a photographer, the former photographer for this individual who seems to be the kingpin in this child abduction, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but Larry King. And not our friend Larry King, who is on television, but Larry King from Nebraska, I guess. And then he was in prison for I don't know how many years, and now he's, as we were told by Jim Rothstein, he's back in Washington, D.C., carrying on his area of expertise. Anyway, Rusty Nelson is the man who was the photographer for so many of the events that took place. And I talked to Rusty, and he would like to come on. He told me a story which was so overwhelming, so sad, but so typical of what we are all fighting. And I can't help. I want to thank all of you for the wonderful comments that you've had so far, and also for the comments that you had about John DeCamp last night. And as you all said, and I said, and Ted Gunderson also said, is that we could feel the pain in John DeCamp's voice. We could feel the, at least, trepidation, and if not, abject fear. And as his dear friend, who is now departed for the same reasons, William Colby, former head of the CIA, told him, he said, "John, don't go there. Back off, forget it, because there are some things you can't fight. They're too big." Well, I respect anybody's opinion, anybody's choice in that. But I have to make my choice too. And I don't even know at this point how we can fight this evil, because it goes beyond what we would consider evil. Anyway, hopefully tonight, Ted and myself, and at least Noreen Gosch, and hopefully Rusty Nelson will have on, and we can figure something out. And so we'll talk about that tonight. I'm so glad that Rusty Nelson has agreed to come on with us. And what I would like to do, and I know Noreen Gosch is listening, I would like to keep Rusty on for about an hour with Ted and myself, and then in the last hour of our show tonight, bring Noreen back on, and then kind of wrap up the whole week. But Rusty Nelson has some incredible information, and I'm going to ask each of you to listen, because Rusty has a story that's sad because of what's happening to him now. And if you can find it in your heart, and I know because many of you know the financial position we're in, and you help us out. Rusty Nelson is, at this point, because of what he elected to do, to step forward, to help stop this horrendous thing going on. Rusty's destitute. The government took away his means of support, which was, Rusty, as I said, was a photographer, and he was just starting out after breaking away, and we'll hear that story, from the evilness of what has been going on. And the government came in and not only took and then destroyed everything he had, cameras, computers, his files, everything, but they threw him in jail. And we'll find out why. But if you could, in some way, maybe you could help this man out. And maybe, just maybe, we will all figure out a way that, with all of us working and exposing it, and shining light on it. Remember, you shine light on these roaches and they will run away. Maybe, just maybe, we can stop it. It's not easy. And it's not easy for any of these people. But it's something that we all have to do. So if Noreen is listening, Noreen, I would like to be able to call you at 9 o'clock our time, Mountain Time, and then you, Ted, and myself would be on for the last hour. And it will give us time to have Rusty Nelson for an hour with us and hear his story and some of the things that he knows. So everybody stay where you are. I'm going to get my co-host, Mr. Ted Gunderson. Quite a guy. I like Ted. I like him. Please stay where you are. I'm Alex Merklinger, and this is Mysteries of the Mind on the Millennium Radio Network. And I'll be right back. Yeah, everybody, we are back. I apologize for taking a little longer than usual, only because I wanted to hear the end of that one song. So I was talking with my co-host, and really a special guy. And that's Ted Gunderson. Ted, welcome back. And it's almost a shame that it's Friday and our series is about over.
Well, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on for all 4 nights. It's been a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and we've really pumped a lot of good information out there. And from what you told me a few moments ago, we've got a very, very special guest coming on.
Yeah.
At the top of the hour, and it will really be great to hear from him. He is one individual who is right in the middle of all this.
Right, yeah. And I hope Noreen, and I know she is listening, and I just want to, because I won't have time to call her ahead of time, but we will have Noreen Gosch on the last hour, Ted.
Okay, good.
And then just hear from Noreen and anything that has happened and some of her ideas as to what we can all do.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
I've had, let me just tell you my experience with Rusty.
Okay.
Okay, you want to announce who's coming on?
Well, I did already, so it's...
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep. It's Rusty.
Okay, Rusty Nelson. Rusty
right.
Nelson was the photographer, and he'll go into much more detail than this.
Yep.
For the group from 1987 to 88 for about a year. And Larry King, this is Rusty's story now, sold him for sex to some fellow in Washington, D.C. in a motel room. And Rusty wasn't in that. He's strictly a photographer. And so the man came to his room. Rusty said, let me go in the bathroom and wash up. And he went out the window.
Wow.
And went to Nebraska and lived on one of his dad's farms. His dad's a very wealthy farmer. He has a number of farms there. He lived there for about a year or maybe a little more. And then during that period, the FBI was looking for him. They didn't know where to find him. And his mother, not knowing the circumstances, they came to the mother and asked her where her son was, and she told him. And so the FBI went over to the old farm. It was the grandparents' old farm, and talked to him. And then Rusty took off. And he made his way cross-country in, I think, a hearse. He did have a hearse at one time. I think it was in a hearse. And he was able to handle it financially by going from town to town and offering to wash windows. He's a great window washer, by the way. He's washed my car window many times.
Okay.
And so Rusty then, I'm giving you folks a little background before Rusty comes on the air.
Yeah.
I don't know if Rusty's listening or not, is he?
I don't know, but I hope he is. But I can't. I don't know if he is even capable with, because he had so many of his things stolen by the government.
Well, yes, that's right. And so I'm giving you just the highlights now. And so Rusty is traveling cross country, and he has these pictures of these prominent Washington, D.C. celebrities and others, politicians, et cetera,
Right.
who were involved in these activities with these children, sexual activities, and the parties at Larry King's the second party after the first party. And he also is a professional photographer, and so if he would see a beautiful young lady or a person, he would offer them the opportunity to be a model, take their pictures, and so on and so forth. He gets to Portland, Oregon. Now, in the meantime, he stashed some of these pictures around the country. And he gets to Portland, Oregon, and the police stop him because they say he had the taillight out. They probably knocked the taillight out themselves. And they arrest him, and they confiscate several 100,000 photographs in the back of his hearse. And they tell Rusty that one of the photographs back there, of course, nobody's going to look at a couple 100,000 photographs. One of the photographs in the back of the truck is of an underage girl. Now, I've been with Rusty when he's approached these girls to see if they wanted to be models, by the way. And he always says, now, if you're underage, I don't want you, and I want you to sign this waiver. And they always sign the waiver if they're not underage. Anyway, the Portland police claimed he took a picture of one of these young girls who was underage. They arrested him. They tried him without him facing his accuser. He didn't know who this supposed witness was. He frankly does not believe there was a witness. And he is sent to jail. And while he's in jail, this is Rusty's story to me, because I spent 2.5 months with him here a couple of years ago, traveling all over the West Coast looking for the pictures, by the way. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. And while he is in jail, he told me that men in suits would come in and interview him on a regular basis. Now, you have to understand there's a good possibility Rusty's another one of these mind control victims. And so then I heard that he was out, and he was hiding on a farm in Portland. He was still on probation, but when he got off probation, I called him and I said, Rusty, let's go find some of those pictures. Jumped in a car in Las Vegas, drove to Oregon, about 900 miles, and took Rusty off the farm, and we started looking for the pictures. The first place we stopped was in Oregon, and the pictures weren't there. They were in an abandoned shed. The next place we stopped was we drove on into Colorado, and he had hidden these pictures in a mine, abandoned mine.
Jeez. And
we arrived at the mine. It was way up in the Rockies, like 13,000 feet. And the mine had a big steel door on it. We couldn't get in there. And then another place was under a waterfall. And so I went out and bought a harness and rope and everything. And we were there it was getting dark. And when Rusty hit these pictures in the first instance, he told me he was like 160 pounds. Now he weighs about 225. So I'm photographing this from afar. And Rusty goes down on the harness and the rope, and the rope is tied to the back of my pickup truck.
Yeah.
And he slips, and he can't get back up. And it was dark, and I said, Rusty, look, I don't want to be responsible for you having a serious accident. Come up, and we'll go back there one of these days, someday in the future, okay? That was the other one, the third place. And the fourth place we went, he said it was way up, about 2 miles up in the mountains. We parked along the side of the road. This is outside of Durango, Colorado.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is kind of interesting because there was a pickup truck there ahead of us pulled off to the side of the road. It had Washington plates on it, but I noticed in the back window it had for sale in the Colorado telephone number, 303 telephone number. I didn't think much of it because they were there ahead of us, by the way.
Yeah.
So Rusty and another young fellow went up into the mountains. I started up and I couldn't make it. The atmosphere and the lack of oxygen and all that.
You betcha.
I came back and sat in the car with the reporter, and Shannon. There were 4 of us, by the way. He'd driven up from Mississippi to join us to look for these pictures. And then while they were up in the mountains, and Pat and I waited down below for probably several hours. And the first young man came down, and he said that the individual up there, apparently in the pickup truck, who came down ahead of him, he saw him talking to Rusty, and when he came down and took off, Rusty and the other young fellow were still up there. And then Rusty came down after the other young fellow who went up with him, and he came down and he was saying, lions and tigers and bears.
What?
Lions and tigers and bears. And he didn't know who I was, didn't know who anybody was. He was, somebody triggered him. That fellow, whoever he was, triggered him.
Wow.
And he knew, this individual obviously knew the location and knew where Rusty was going and knew what he was heading for. And they beat him there. They beat him to that location. Now, we didn't find any there, okay? Rusty came down. He said they'd been washed away. It looked like they'd been washed away. So then we went to drove down to Taos, New Mexico, and he had hidden the pictures in an old abandoned car. And I think that might have been the hearse that he hid the pictures in. And we couldn't find that hearse. We hit some junkyards, and we hit a house where he'd stayed, and they didn't know anything about it. And so, but also before we went to Taos, John DeCamp drove over there with Rusty, and the sheriff met him at that location. I don't know if this is the same location we were looking for them. We can ask Rusty that. And the sheriff met him and told him to get off the property.
Wow. So
the sheriff knew they were there ahead of time. There were every indications that they knew where we were as we went along. They have this GSP where they can track you. And my car is a homing device, and I'm sure it's being tracked every place I go. Because on a regular basis, in fact, I stopped and had lunch today. And while I was having lunch, somebody flipped my direction signal, and so they know where my car is at all times. And I really don't pay much attention to it.
Right.
It's so common. But anyway, going back to Taos, New Mexico, we didn't find him there. So then I drove Rusty back to Nebraska from there, and we went to the old farm. And you would be shocked to see the old farm where Rusty was interviewed by the FBI.
What?
It was totally destroyed. There were bullet holes.
What?
Yes, bullet holes through the wall, through the ceiling. The heater was turned over. The place was torn apart. There were bullet holes through the refrigerator with a high-powered weapon because it went through the front door and through the back of the refrigerator. It went out the house. These were not 38 slugs.
Yeah.
And I said to Rusty, Rusty, who knew you were here? He said, the only people who knew I was here was the FBI.
My gosh.
So now, recently, no, that's not the end of the story. So we took pictures of the old house and everything, and then Rusty, and then I had to go out. I'd been there for 2.5 months, by the way.
Yeah.
And by the way, in Colorado, at 14,000 feet in November, it's cold. And I slept in the cab of the truck, and Rusty slept. We had some sleeping bags and everything. He slept. We threw a tent kind of over the back of the truck. He slept in the back of the truck. But then I had to come back. I was gone for 2.5 months. I'd spent all my money. I think I spent about $10,000 on that trip.
Oh gosh!
And we didn't find any pictures. I said to Rusty, Rusty, why didn't we find the pictures? And he said, well, the only thing I can think of, he said, is that when these men came in and interviewed me in jail in Portland, one of my personalities may have told them where these pictures are located.
Wow.
And so that's basically, and then here recently now, he, in Nebraska, at about the same time that Jeff Gannon's story came forward and that situation was exposed, Rusty, well, first of all, Hunter Thompson was suicided, and Rusty was arrested for failure to register as a sex offender.
Oh, jeez.
And Rusty, so then here about a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, I jumped on a plane and flew back to Nebraska, got him out of jail. His parents are so disgusted with him. They don't understand the situation. Rusty was a nice young man off the farm. He went to Omaha. He was a photographer in one of the nightclubs there. He was approached and solicited to be a photographer for this group, and then he got into it up to his eyeballs, flying all over the world in private jets, staying in the nicest hotels, et cetera, et cetera. You know, he saw the bright lights for the first time in his life. Yeah. And so anyway, so here about a month or so ago, I heard that he was in jail in Lincoln, so I flew back and posted bail for him. It was only $10,000. I had to come up with $1,000. And then Rusty and I spent about, I guess, almost 2 weeks there. And we talked, we went back to the farm, took some more pictures, and also I did about a 2.5-hour interview with Rusty, and it's on camera. On camera, and I told Rusty I wouldn't release that without his permission, by the way. So
sure.
That's where we are at this time. And Rusty he's a nice young man. He's destitute. We need to help him. I talked to him this morning. He said he had, I think, $6 in his pocket, and that's all. So I'm sending him in fact, I've already got it in an envelope. I'm mailing it to him today. And that's our guest, I guess, in about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. You know, Ted, this is amazing, you know, because when you realize we're talking about stuff that our government has done to this man. I mean, destroyed him, threatened him, took his livelihood away, and yet they're famous for that because they do it. If you step on their toes, they will get you. Well,
they sure got him.
Yeah.
They've destroyed his life. Now, he was arrested in Norfolk, and then he went down. I brought him down to Lincoln, which is, I forget how many miles that is, maybe 100 miles. And he had to when I got him out of bail, he immediately registered, and because he didn't consider himself a sex offender, because the charges are taking a picture of a minor, right? So he has not been accused of any real sexual offense.
Well, were these sexual pictures or what?
No, they were not. They were pictures of girls who were models, according to him. They may have been nudes, but they were not sexual.
Okay.
And so anyway, so I went back and talked to Rusty and got him situated, and he's living with a woman now who's it's not a sexual thing. She's a friend. I met her, and then Rusty and I and this lady we would go to the different places where they feed the homeless, and that was kind of interesting because I'd never been to anything like those. Meals aren't too bad, by the way.
Maybe I should try them.
Yeah, I know where to go if I run out of money. At least in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
But Lincoln's it's a wonderful little town. As a matter of fact, it's my hometown.
Oh.
It's a town of about 200,000, typical university town. There are about when in session, there's probably 25 to 30,000 students there. And it's football is big, as John DeCamp said.
Well, you were a football star there, as I recall.
Well, John said I was a star. He wasn't a star, but if he wants to say I'm a star, I'll take it.
Well, that sounds good, though, Ted.
It sounds good on radio, doesn't it?
High school All-American.
I played ball there. I played football there.
High school All-American, and colleges wanted you all over, and you chose your own state college. I think that's marvelous.
Well, I played Lincoln High School, and we lost one game 7-6 all season. We had a great team.
Wow.
And we should have won that game, by the way, but we didn't. As a matter of fact, our fullback went about 60 yards to a touchdown, and they called it back because the referee said that I clipped somebody. So
Oh, so you did it.
So that was
Oh, gosh.
that was my nemesis in high school football. I felt so bad about that. We'd won the game with that man, but I think the referee was wrong. I didn't really care. I did a crossbody block on the guy, and he said I used my arms too much or something, you know.
Well, you were a linebacker, weren't you?
No, well, I played linebacker, corner, and blocking back, and mainly, and also, you know, I carried the ball on the kid. I did a little bit of everything.
That's good.
And
I used to love to run into guys like you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I was playing football when I was 42 years old.
Jeez.
Yeah, because I kept on playing when I was an adult, and I had 3 sons. All of them were football players. My oldest son was captain of the high school team, and they played on Friday night. And then I had an old farm outside Philadelphia, 7.5 acres, and I leveled the back of the cornfield, and we had a football field back there. And every Saturday morning, all the high school kids would come over, and we'd have our second game over there.
Oh, my gosh. That's funny.
And that's where I played. I played with the boys, and I screwed up my shoulder real good. As a matter of fact, I'm still suffering from it.
Sounds like Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, but football instead of baseball.
Well, I had a baseball diamond there, too. I put a backstop up. We had a basketball court. I was athletic director.
Okay, yeah. Jeez.
And then my number 2 son was all conference, Ted Jr., and then my number 3 son was a tackle. He was the big kid in the bunch. And we had a lot of fun and growing up with the kids.
That's neat. That really is neat.
Yeah. But, you know, athletics are great. They're great. As I think I said earlier, teach you how to win and lose. And I do hate to lose. That's one of the things that keeps me going in this field that we're involved in, Alex.
Yeah, for sure.
We have to keep going forward. And, you know, I was thinking about one of the statements you made, a couple of statements you made yesterday about John DeCamp. But, you know, John has already done an awful lot for the cause. His book and so forth. And he's got young children now. He's concerned about them. And those children have been threatened. And my kids are all grown in their late 40s.
Yeah. So
I'm giving away my age now, so.
Well, you started only about 7, so you're not that old.
That's right.
Something like that.
I entered the FBI when I was 14 years old.
Okay. Oh, I do understand that, too.
I was the youngest at the time, the youngest FBI. In fact, I was 22 years old when I applied. You had to be 25.
Uh-huh.
And I went in, I was in Detroit, Michigan. I was a salesman for a Hormel meatpacking company. And the agent liked me, and when I applied, and I said, look, I got a problem. I'm only 22. He says, write a personal letter to Jed Goover. Tell him, although you're only 22, you look like you're 28. And the truth is, I look like I was 19. I've always looked young for my age. And Jed Goover bought it.
And you actually heard back from him?
The next thing I knew, I was in Quantico training.
Oh, my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Some days.
I drove over 27 years in the FBI. I retired when I was straight 50. I'm 76 now.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Geez, you don't sound that old.
No, I'm not that old.
Okay, I understand that. But it's all a state of mind, isn't it?
But no, age is a number. That's all.
One of these days, Ted, I'd like to have a special show with you on the FBI and, you know, have people understand some of the training you go through and what the FBI stands for.
Oh, yeah, that's not a problem. That'd be a great show. You know, I handled some real hot cases. July 12, 1972, I negotiated with 2 terrorists at the Philadelphia International Airport for the release of 113 passengers.
Really?
And then 7 crewmen, so.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, you know, I was involved in bank robberies and kidnappings, extortions. It was a lot of fun. Excuse me. But I did a little bit of everything. Worked counter-espionage in New York City. Yeah. Counterterrorism. I've been to counterterrorism schools. And tremendous training. That's one of the reasons I kept going, Alex, because I had all this training, and I said to myself, you know, I just can't back off with this training and go play golf every day. And I did enjoy golf, and I've had to give it up because of this work. But I'm not complaining, believe me.
Well, you know, I got to say, I'm right along there with you to go back into it because, well, see, golf, as you know, Ted, is the sport of Satan. I am totally convinced of that because a loving God would not put me in a position where my anger would manifest like it does on the golf course.
Really?
Oh, my goodness.
You mean when you miss hit a bad shot?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, I can handle that.
Well,
I need to teach you the mental aspects of golf.
I can do a lot better now because I'm older, I'm more mature, I'm wiser, and I don't get as mad. However, when I was starting out, a fellow that has worked with me for years and years and years, and I worked with him, and he's one of the long drive champions. He was 5-time long drive champion. And being a pro golfer, they are used to being around people that can't play well and probably use colorful language. Well, Paul, after a while, wouldn't play with me.
Really?
Oh, no. He said it was too embarrassing. And then my wife, I was teaching her how to play, and then finally she stopped playing, but she would drive around in the cart with me. And then pretty soon she wouldn't even go in the cart with me.
Because you're that angry about not getting a good shot?
Yeah. I'm a perfectionist, and I demand perfection within myself.
Well, I'm a perfectionist too, but I realize you can't be perfect all the time.
I try, though.
But I try too. And on the golf course, I have to accept the fact that I have limited capability and abilities there.
Yeah. Well, I've really, Ted, I've settled down, and you would be very proud of me now. But yeah,
you were teaching the mental aspects of golf, and you were having.
I'll tell you, right, we got about 2 minutes before we bring Rusty on, but I want to tell you one story. I used to write articles for Golf Magazine. They had an article about me, 4-page article in Golf Magazine, and they had the greatest response of any article ever written. And I wrote about the mental aspect of golf. So anyway, I became known as the guru of the mental aspect of golf. This was before any of this stuff came out, because now it's very popular. But I'm talking about back in the early 70s, 74, 75. And I was living in Denver at the time, and then 2 young professional golfers who were on tour came to study with me. One was a female who was on the LPGA tour, and the other was a kid working to get on the big tour, the PGA tour, but he was on the mini tour at that time. So they came out and we played around the golf in my golf course, my club, and I missed a shot. And there happened to be, and it was with a 7-iron, there happened to be a metal pole sticking up out of the ground. I guess it was for aeration or something. And I took my club and I whacked it, and I knocked off about an 18-inch piece. It came flying back, missed my head and my eye by about 2 inches. I was still so angry, I did it again, knocked off another 1.5 foot piece. That almost hit me. And I looked over, and I saw the expression on these 2 kids' faces. Their eyes were like half dollars. Their mouths were open, and they were looking at me like saying, "Oh, my God, what did we get into? This is the guru of golf." And so anyway, yes,
So you cleaned up your accent then?
Oh, quite a bit. Quite a bit. Yeah. I could tell you some stories that are truly unbelievable. But let's get Rusty on, okay?
Okay.
Everybody stay where you are. Ted Gunderson and I will be right back with everybody. We are back. And coming back, I want to, of course, bring our guest host, Ted Gunderson, on with me, but also a very special young man, somebody whose story you're going to be amazed at, and that is Rusty Nelson. Rusty, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us on Mysteries of the Mind.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Alex.
And try and talk up as loud as you can. I don't know why this thing is acting like this.
Is that better?
That's a little better. Yeah, Ted, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sir. Rusty, number one, I want people to understand a little bit about you, who you are, how your involvement started with this whole sordid story that we're all into. Could you kind of give people a little bit about your background and where we stand now?
Well, I've been a professional photographer for almost 25 years now. When I was first starting out and getting established, I was, a starving artist. And I got hooked up with Larry King. I was going to this bar and taking pictures. They were doing drag shows. It was a gay bar, and well, it was gay and straight, basically. Whoever come out, they had a good time. And they'd have all the drag queens come in on Sunday night.
Right.
I stayed for one of the shows and just laughed so hard, it was just hilarious. So I started taking pictures of the drag queens and selling them to the performers. So, you know, it kind of supported me in that. Well, things got a little bit slow, and I mentioned to the owner of the bar that I was looking for some work. I was hinting to him that, you know, I could use the job there, but it was slow for them too. Right. There was another man sitting there, and he piped up that he knew somebody who would be very interested in having me go to work for him. And that just happened to be Sam Soda. He was the man who said this. Well, lo and behold, he hooked me up with Larry King. Yeah. And I had no idea who Larry King was. And
let me interrupt you a minute. Larry King, a black man, not Larry King Live.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Larry King. He had the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, which a lot of people are very familiar with.
Rising star in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Rusty. I just wanted to get that across.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where this all came in. And the next thing I know, I was getting all brand new clothes and being flown all over on private jets and you name it.
So Larry King had been into his deal quite a while when he first met you and hired you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was what year, Rusty?
I believe it would have been probably 87.
I thought you said 87, 88, right?
Yeah, 87, 88.
Right.
And, you know, that was where I came into the pictures at that point. So, you know, it was amazing. Here I am, you know, a little plowboy from northeast Nebraska, and grew up on a farm in a good family and all this, and then all of a sudden, here's this, what looked like a very wealthy man who's shown interest in my work. And, you know, it was one of these things where it was unbelievable because, here I am, I'm getting, brought into a whole other lifestyle, the rich, the famous, the movers, the shakers.
The bright lights.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Jet airplanes.
Yeah. And, you know, at first everything was all hunky-dory. I didn't see anything wrong with anything at all. And he had me sit in his office at the credit union, and he'd have our meetings and that, and I was there, and then pretty soon I started to realize I was there as the eye candy. And, you know, I got to looking at this, you know, trying to figure out what was going on. And the more I looked at it, the more I saw that there was some big problems. And I noticed that there were a lot of indiscretions and that shouldn't be. It didn't take me long to figure out there were two sets of books at that credit union.
Wow.
Just from what was being said. My family, my older brother is in the money business. He's a certified financial planner, and he's worked for various banks and that. So I knew a bit about what the money game was. And, you know, the different things that were being said and how one thing was being told to one person and something totally different was being told to another. And supposedly they were talking about the same thing in two different meetings.
Yeah.
But for example, what would they be talking about, Rusty?
Well, the financial end of what was going on at the credit union.
Okay.
And Larry had no idea that I had any idea what financial things meant.
And you're pretty sharp about knowing when to talk and when not to talk to.
Well, I try.
No, you are. I've been around you enough to know that.
I stick my foot in my mouth sometimes when I really shouldn't, or open it way too wide when it should be shut.
But I want to make something very clear also, Rusty, before you. I want to make it very clear to the audience that Rusty is not a gay, not homosexual at all.
Yeah. You know, I'm straight. I got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, there are some wonderful gay people. There are wonderful gay straight people too. And it's just I take people as they are, you know, whatever their faults may be. I don't judge them. It's not my place to judge them.
Sure.
But you know, I'm a photographer. I'm basically the wallflower. I see everything.
Now,
very little escapes me.
Up to this point, Rusty, what was Larry King having you do? Just as you said, hang around and look like a pretty boy, or were you actually photographing?
Supposedly, I was going to work for him as a waiter. He did a lot of catering, and he had a new restaurant and jazz. There was a jazz nightclub called Princess Palace after his son, Prince. And I was to be a waiter. Well, I spent very little time there working as a waiter.
Yeah.
And, you know, needless to say, I had very little income, but I had almost anything anyone's heart desire was brought to me, basically.
Uh-huh.
And the finest hotels, the nicest limousines, jet planes, you name it. Expensive clothes. He spent $4,800 on clothes on me one morning.
Jeez.
Because he thought that I looked like I walked out of a Goodwill.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you know, I'm a neat dresser usually, and you know, I dress for the occasion. If I'm going to be getting dirty, I wear dirty clothes. Old clothes don't matter. But I've got a tuxedo. I can dress up nice as the next guy and get on the red carpet if I need to. But you know, it's just amazing. Most people would never, ever in their wildest dreams be able to imagine this stuff.
Well, what then, Rusty, was going on as when King flew you all around and, you know, kind of showed you off? What were you doing? Just there looking pretty, or did you understand what he was doing?
No. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What were you doing, and what was going on during this initial phase when you just first started to work with Larry King?
Well, we were going around. He was doing fundraisers and things like that. You know, $5,000 a plate. You know, suppers and things like that. And I was there to take pictures of these parties.
Okay.
Well, lo and behold, afterwards, he was having another party with a few select people, and this was a sex party.
Now, were you aware of it at the time? Not
until later on.
Wow.
You know, it was into it a few weeks before I started getting the indoctrinated, basically, into this.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had it all scheduled out, basically, how he brought a person in. And the steps that he went through to get them indoctrinated, basically, and are initiated into what they were doing. And it was one of those things where by the time I figured out what was going on, I was into it to the point to where I knew I had to protect myself somehow.
Yeah.
And that's where I went in, and I would take pictures from the hip. That's where I'd keep my camera down by my hip.
Oh, okay.
And I'd disconnect the flash cord.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd usually drop in, I'd keep a spare roll of high-speed film, and I'd drop that in and go ahead and start shooting that way and get pictures of some of the people and who they were with.
Yeah.
And a little bit of what they were doing. So it wouldn't be so bizarre, because that's where the way Larry always said it was that if something goes down, nobody will ever believe you if anything's ever said to them about what's going on.
Meaning the people that were there and their position in government and society.
They were so prominent?
Senators.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, there was one night where there was a presidential limousine.
Oh.
And the Secret Service had swept the place beforehand.
Yep.
And they'd kept it secured for a couple days. And, you know, that's what went on.
Was that the first party or the second party?
It stayed for the second.
Okay.
Wow.
So, you know, it was one of those things where these people, they, you know, even to this day, people think that I'm full of it by relating to them some of the things that have went on. And, you know, I was, to the point to where I realized what was going on. I knew that if I was just to go to somebody and say that, you know, this is what's happening, they would basically squash me, because I'd watched Robert Wadman, he's the chief of police in Omaha at that time, take a stack of $100 bills, probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, or possibly even thicker, which I figured would be about $50,000. And this, from what I understood, was a weekly payment that he received from Larry King.
A weekly?
For what? For basically keeping things hushed up in Omaha. He would have no problems with any of his things that were going on. And Wadman would go to the second parties a lot. And, you know, he would get in on a lot of things that a police chief shouldn't be partaking in.
There's second parties in Omaha and in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yeah, and New York, and there's various places around. Larry King, he had, to give you an idea of how much pull this man had, he sang the national anthem to open the National Republican Convention in 1984 and again in 1988. And he had, I believe it was 84, wasn't it, when he rented the ranch that South Fork or Dallas,
that's right,
the TV show,
and
flew people over there to have a great big party out there. And if I remember right, John DeCamp actually got to go to that party, and he said it was just the most lavish thing he'd ever said or seen. And,
Rusty, on these the second parties at night, was it strictly homosexual with young boys, or was it young boys and young girls?
It was predominantly men with boys.
Is that right?
But it didn't stop at that. He had both, you know, whatever anybody's tastes were, he would cater to them. And, you know, it was an eye-opening experience.
How many boys would be at these second parties?
It depended on where the party was. It might just be a handful. There might be a dozen. You know, it depended on what was going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was basically Larry King was a pimp. And the credit union was just a front. And
how about the girls? How many girls would be there?
Usually just 2 or 3. There wasn't usually very many girls.
So in other words, if they preferred girls, they were still available.
Oh, yeah.
Boys or girls were available.
Yep. So.
And they were all pretty young?
Oh, yeah. I was probably one of the oldest ones around, and I was in my mid-20s.
Wow.
How old were these boys and girls?
They could be anywhere from probably 8, 10, 12 years old, all the way to usually their early 20s.
And where'd they come from?
Some of them came from Omaha, some of them came from New York, or he had them out in Washington, D.C. He could pull people out of the woodwork from anywhere, it seemed like.
Now,
how about Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Francisco?
Oh, yeah, he had people all over.
Now, did you have parties at all those cities?
What's that?
Did you have parties at all those cities?
I didn't go to the parties personally at all those cities, but I know that they did have parties at different places.
Now, Rusty, with your knowledge of what has happened and what was going on in retrospect, do you think these kids all were kids that had been abducted and then went through this mind control program and mind training program?
Not all of them. You know, a lot of them, they were street kids.
Yeah.
And he had a way of finding people who would not be missed. And they would basically, he'd find somebody out on the street and he'd bring them in and feed them, clothe them, give them a real nice, glamorous life.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's payback time. And that's what he would do.
So he was a con artist.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
To go along with it, huh?
Yeah, he didn't live in the ghetto for nothing.
Yeah.
Did you take pictures of these sex acts?
I shot pictures from the hip. You know, I didn't actually sit there and focus and take pictures of the things. That's what they wanted me to do, but I did not want to get into that. And
so you were taking pictures from the hip to protect yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was doing. And in federal court, they did have a guy that was taking the pictures, and I'd seen him on about 3 different occasions. And one day, we were out in Washington, D.C. Larry King had Nancy Reagan's hairdresser come and cut color and perm my hair. And anyway, he got all these new clothes, and he would say, you wear this, 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 or that. And you be at this place at a certain time with your camera. And I'd be there and dressed like that, and then he'd have me go somewhere else, and it was change clothes on the way and wear this. And what they were doing is putting me out in front of all the people and basically showing me off as the photographer. And they were showing me off, and in the process, what they were doing was having this other photographer shooting the sex parties and the little kids and snuff films and stuff like that.
Snuff films?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where they actually go out and kill somebody on film.
Yeah.
Right.
That's one of the things that Larry really wanted me to get into. And I wanted no part of that whatsoever.
How did you resist that, Rusty?
Oh, I have ways of sidestepping a lot of things if I can help it.
Yeah.
And that's basically it is, you know, I got offered a tremendous amount of money to do these. And, you know, it was, I turned them down because I didn't want to get into legal problems. And the amount of money wouldn't be worth it for what the results would be, and the fact of just having to live with the fact that you've done this.
Plus, I've been around Rusty quite a bit for long periods of time, and he's a man who really cares and has compassion, and this just wasn't his bag. I mean, he came in with morals.
Rusty, how often was Larry King making these snuff films and even the pedophilia parties? How often were these going on?
Oh, the parties were a couple times a week, a lot of times.
My gosh.
You know, it was a weekly event, basically.
And what about these snuff films? Did he do those indoors or outdoors?
They were usually done out of the way. You know, they were places that, like an old farmhouse or something like that, where they would sacrifice somebody.
Boy.
Well, who would they sacrifice?
Basically, they'd take one of the kids.
Were the kids that had been kidnapped or otherwise?
I guess. As far as I could tell, that's where they come from. And
did you get a chance to talk to any of these kids?
Oh, there were some of them I got to talk to. You didn't get to say too much because Larry always seemed to have an ear on everything. You never knew who was going to rat you out to him.
Yeah.
If you said something. And he was a very vicious man if you crossed his path.
Did he torture you?
Oh, there have been a couple times. And, there was things where I was beat around a little bit, and it was put pressure on, and he knew how to blackmail a person very well.
Yeah. My gosh.
How did he blackmail you?
Well, basically, he said, you've been around this, we'll take and tell your folks that you're gay, this and that. The next thing, we know where you live, and your family, they're not safe. That's where we're at. Basically he would make you to where you were very uncomfortable if you didn't do what he wanted you to do.
The film that you shot from your hip, Rusty,
Yeah.
That was film that you kept for yourself and they didn't know about it?
Yep.
But what about the other film, huh?
That's the film that Gary Caradori got killed over.
The film from the hip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, did you keep any?
They didn't know you were doing this, of course.
No, Larry, he'd have the film for me, and if he gave me 5 rolls of film, he expected 5 rolls of film back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And, if it was anything that might be damaging to somebody or that, he made sure that he had the film.
Right.
And I was basically sneaking in an extra roll of film.
Hmm.
And
so instead of 5 rolls of film, you had 6 and 7 rolls of film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know how I carry film around.
Yeah, I've seen you operate.
Yeah. But Rusty, how about this? The other fellow, the other photographer, who did take the incriminating pictures and also the snuff films.
Okay. Getting back to where I was saying about federal court, this came up in federal court, what was it, February 5th of 99 in Judge Warren Erbaum's courtroom in the Paul Benassi versus Larry King trial.
Right.
He took and came up with the extra photographer came up. And you there?
We're here.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded like I got cut off. Anyway, that came up, and they had me take off my shirt and show them that I did not have a scar on my right shoulder. And the photographer that was filming the sex parties had a scar on his right shoulder.
Oh, okay.
So,
what happened to him, Rusty?
What's that?
What happened to this other photographer?
I have no idea where he's at, if he's even alive.
Really?
And did you know his name at the time?
I was thinking it was Nick. I can't remember exactly what it was. I don't have any of my papers to go back through and look.
Yeah. Rusty, what an incredible experience, I have to tell you. I mean, just, you hear the stories. I read some of the testimony from Paul Benassi and the stuff up at Bohemian Grove. Did you ever go up there?
Yep. I've been to Bohemian Grove.
What kind of things were going on up there that you saw or that you photographed?
Well, they've got a 40-foot owl up there that they burn in effigy. And if I remember right, his name is Hola. And it's sort of a satanic ritual type deal. And for those people who don't know what Bohemian Grove is, not on Capitol Hill, it's all cut and dried before it gets there.
Wow.
The Bohemian Grove is a very, very elite, select, well-guarded club. I mean, it is creme de la creme.
And who attended the Bohemian Grove, and how often did they meet?
I don't know how often they met. I was only out there that time. And anyway, they would go out there, and it was a good old boys club, basically. And that's where your laws were basically made. Your banking was taken care of. Things like that would deal with your everyday life would really come to be. And it was just absolutely amazing for a plowboy to see this.
And who would attend the Bohemian Grove?
It was all your movers and shakers that worked behind the scenes, basically. The ones that didn't like being in the limelight, but they made the things happen. The people that were in the limelight, for the most part, were just their puppets.
So
were they there also, the celebrities and the politicians?
Well, some of them would be, but your politicians and that, some of those would be there. But the people that really would make things happen, like the world banking and things like that, those are the people who took part in these.
And that's where a lot of the stuff films were also made, wasn't it?
I believe so. I don't know for a fact, but I believe so. From what I understand, from what I've seen, that's like I tell everybody when I do an interview. This is what I've seen. It's what I believe, and I believe it to be true.
Yeah.
And I have no reason to be making any of this stuff up.
My gosh, no.
I got out on the line big time, even just talking to you about this.
Sure. Well, I can imagine.
What about kidnapped kids? Were you aware of some of these kids being kidnapped?
Yes, I'd come to realize that was happening too. And, it's these people were really, they were ruthless. They would go out and they had catalogs where they would have pictures of kids, and somebody would pick out a kid that they wanted, and they went and they would go kidnap them to order, basically. And, this is basically what happened to Johnny Gosch.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Johnny Gosch or know him?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you did?
Can you tell us about that?
I can't say too much about it because of things that are going on right now. But, he was brought into something that would, it isn't his background. You know Noreen, and she's a good lady. I mean, she's a wonderful person. And, he basically was brought in, made into a sex toy.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what all came up. The kid's extremely bright.
How old was he, Rusty, when you met him, and also the last time you met him too?
Oh, I don't have any idea how old he would have been.
Well, how many years ago was that?
It would have been back in 87, 88.
Oh, okay.
Well, he was 12 years old in 82, so
yeah,
he'd have been 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
When you talked to Johnny, did he talk to you at all about his background or the circumstance of his kidnapping?
We couldn't get into that much because it was always, you didn't know who you were talking to. And you didn't dare say too much.
And you didn't dare ask too many questions either.
That's right. It's like Larry would always tell me, I used to be very good at remembering people's names and their faces. And he basically would drill it into us that you don't remember who, you don't remember what, and you don't remember what their name is.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw Larry King, Rusty?
It would have been in Washington, D.C. right before I escaped out the window.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I would have been in '88. I don't travel well. I'm one of these people that needs a couple days to regain my composure, basically, after I've done some traveling. And we'd just flown in, and I went upstairs to sleep and, just relax a little bit. And next thing I know, here's a knock on the door, and this Jewish guy comes in. And, he goes, "Are you resting?" I said, "Yeah." And, "Oh, how can I help you?" He goes, "Well, you're mine for the night." And I go, "What?" He says, "Yeah, I bought you from Larry." And I went ahead and went in. I had my clothes in the bathroom, and I luckily had my billfold and clothes in there. And I left all my equipment there, and I escaped out the window. And I went home, got everything out of my apartment, and I went and hid in an abandoned farm place.
Wow.
For going on a year, and no running water or anything like that.
Huh.
And
do you think Larry King was looking for you?
Oh, I know he was. I know he was.
Well, Russ, you said you went up the second floor at the hotel, but you went out the window. Did you drop down to the ground from there, or what?
Yeah, I jumped out the window. It was at the house on Embassy Road.
It was at the house.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a hotel room, I thought.
No.
So you didn't have to go fall on a whole flight of stairs or anything?
No.
Okay.
No. And so anyway, I got out there, and it was pretty touchy. And then after the Franklin deal blew up,
yeah,
it got the news and all that there for a while. It made international news. And then here came, it was around New Year's, I believe, I started getting lonely out there by myself on that farm. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to the Max. That was that bar that I'd been taking the pictures out of the drag queens for New Year's Eve. And I did. And lo and behold, I got to talking to some of the old friends, and they asked, well, where you living? And I told them. And, oh yeah, we'll write you this or that. And the next thing, I was getting my mail from a few miles away and that. So next thing you know, here comes the FBI, pounding on Mom's door, and they went ahead and they just ransacked her house without a warrant. And that they were looking for me and for pictures and whatever else. Well, they came back again, done it to her again, and she told them where I was at. So they came over and they ransacked my house.
And interviewed you.
Yep. And they got me all worried and that and put on the spot. And then they went ahead and here's a 2-story house, and they just ransacked the main floor. They didn't even go upstairs. And lo and behold, if they would have went upstairs, they would have got much of what they were looking for pictures of that, the who's who and that. But the other thing is they didn't go through any of the outbuildings, the barns, the haystacks, or anything else that are on a farm that you'd normally hide stuff in.
Why do you think they didn't?
To scare me.
To harass you.
Harass me. Keep my mouth shut.
Wow.
And it ended up a lot of problems in the family because of that. And right now, Dad and I are not even on speaking terms.
Rusty, then you left there, didn't you?
What's that?
You left the farm then.
Yeah, I got kicked off the farm because of that.
Oh.
So I ended up going on the road. And, well, actually for a while, I lived in Lincoln, about a mile away from the state capitol where all the different things were being investigated by the unicameral, which is we have one body of legislative government here in Nebraska.
Yeah.
And it's like your Senate and House combined. And they were doing all these investigations into it, and they were looking for me high and low, and they couldn't find me. And here I was a mile away from the state capitol. The police even came to my door one night. I was having an art show. And so anyway,
they know who you were?
What? Yeah, they knew who I was. They took my driver's license even.
Wow.
And, you know, I thought, oh my God, it's all over with. And they harassed me for about 15 minutes and then let me go back in to my home where I had the art show in my studio. And it was just a matter of moments before the whole place cleared out because nobody wanted to be around me because the cops.
Yeah. Boy,
and so that pretty much ruined my chances of making any money off of the art show. I didn't sell a thing that night.
So then where did you go after that then?
Well, I went on the road. I went ahead and I knew things weren't quite right, and I just went on the road, and I never stayed in any one place for much more than 3 weeks.
Wow.
I would lived in my van, washed windows, and did odd jobs or worked temp jobs somewhere for daily work, daily pay, you know, basically for nothing.
Did you get paid by cash, or you have to give your Social Security number?
Oh, you had to give a Social Security number.
Okay.
How long it took me to catch up with you? About 3 weeks, huh?
Yeah. And, you know, when I could get a sense of when I was being followed. And if I felt that I was being followed, I'd be 500 miles away by morning.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, Rusty, this went on for how long, and or is it still going on? Because I know you also just recently had a lot of legal problems, right?
Oh, yeah. They threw me in jail right after Valentine's Day, 2 days after Hunter Thompson.
Now, just talking about Hunter Thompson, had you ever seen him, like up at Bohemian Grove or anything, filming any of the snuff films?
Well, he tried to get me to do a snuff film for him.
Hunter Thompson did.
Brokered the deal.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, you know, if he was presented to me as Hunter and I didn't know who he was until I seen his picture after he committed suicide, supposedly, but I think he was murdered.
Oh, sure, yeah. So that's just recently you knew that?
Oh, yeah.
But you met him and he wanted you to do a snuff film back when you were with Larry King?
Yeah.
Huh.
And it wasn't just one time. It was multiple times that he tried to have me do this for them.
Yeah.
And it was a very large sum of money. More than most people would make working a regular job in 5 or 10 years.
Is that right? My gosh.
Yeah.
Well, the snuff films sell for like $50,000 each, don't they?
It was more than that.
Is that right?
What, 100,000?
Yep.
That's for one copy?
Yeah. That was to do the original.
Oh, okay.
So.
What a sad thing. Rusty, tell everybody what has happened, what the government has done to you, because I want people to know literally the sacrifices that you and your life now has given in order to follow this and not do what you know is wrong. But because I know you're having a problem right now, and I'd like people to help you out.
Oh, I appreciate that. I have a lot of health problems as a result of this.
Yeah, tell them about them running over you, Rusty.
Oh, yeah.
What was this?
Portland, Oregon. I was riding my bike, and a car came driving up behind me at about 50 miles an hour, and they opened their back door as I was going over railroad tracks and hit me with their car door. And I fell off my bike and hit my head on a railroad track. And I now have epilepsy from that. I have a seizure disorder.
And you can't drive?
Yeah, they took my driver's license away, and it's really not a good deal. I have to rely on other people for everything. You know, I take over $4,000 a month in medication.
Yeah.
And you have no money.
Yeah, to get help with that, I have to not work. You know, I'd love to work. I wish I could. But if I do, then they take that away from me to where I cannot get any of my medication that I need to live with.
Wow.
And nobody's going to be paying me enough money to where after taxes, I can come up with that much money each month just to buy my pills.
How do you make it, Rusty? How do you make the $4,000? That's a lot of money.
Well, it's different assistance. I've tried for Social Security disability, and that's such a joke trying to get help through the government. All they're doing is they sit there, they have their government jobs, and they push the papers. And how many people do you know that have a government job where they actually help people instead of harassing people or, you know, tearing down trees so they can give you more paperwork to fill out and pass the buck on, no, we can't help you, but go fill out paperwork for the next one. And they can, you know, it's like getting disability. If I got that, it's $544 a month is what I would have to live on.
How do you pay your medical bill, $4,000 a month?
Well, that's, you know, like right now, the county is helping me out with that right now.
Rusty, how long ago?
For the month.
How long ago did this happen to you?
What's that?
How long ago did this happen to you when this car went by and hit you?
This was in '98. They'd put me in jail, and I'd gotten out, and that for a while in '98.
Yeah.
And this is when that happened to me. And
they arrested you in Portland too.
Yeah, they arrested me. Well, it wasn't in Portland, but it was in Oregon. I was driving back home. I decided I was tired of running. I was going to go back home. And so I went, loaded up everything in my van, and I was driving back to Nebraska. And they arrested me in a little town called La Grande, Oregon. And this was on Friday, the 13th of September in 1996.
Now, and what charges did they get you on?
They arrested me for supposedly kiddie porn. And they said that there was a girl I'd taken pictures of, and everybody I take pictures of, I get a model release from. They have to be of age. They have to provide an ID.
Right.
And if at all possible, that's even notarized.
Okay.
And, you know, they could not produce pictures. They would not produce the person. They said it was a minor, so they did not have to go in front of me in court because it would be too traumatizing for them. So I have no idea who this person even is.
Or if there is a person.
Yeah, right. Or if there is a person.
There probably never was a person.
Yeah.
Well, you've been targeted ever since you went out the hotel bathroom window in Washington, D.C. They've been after you, Rusty.
Well, they were even after me before that. You know, there was somebody had got wind of what was going on, and they had the police called on me.
You mean wind of what was going on as far as your
Larry King? And,
oh, really?
Yeah, and that's where I first seen Rodman get his payoff.
Wow.
And that's directly as a result of what went on.
Yeah. Rusty, who were some of the leading politicians that you used to see at the second party?
Well, I won't name too many names, but one is Bob Kerrey.
Yep.
Senator Bob Kerrey.
From Nebraska.
Yep. Used to be Governor Bob Kerrey.
Yeah. And you witnessed him, what, with boys or girls or both?
Both.
Yeah. Gosh, you know, the sad thing is you were just trying to get back on your feet. The government came in and basically destroyed and stole all your equipment, you said.
Well, I had to leave all my equipment when I left out the window. And they've basically destroyed my life. We'd set up a wedding photography studio and portrait studio in Norfolk, Nebraska.
And this is just recently, right?
Yes, we got the building the 27th of January.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
And I went in, we had the display set up, and we were starting to take pictures, and we really had done a tremendous job of getting things up and running. We were getting paying clients coming in and everything. And it was, what was it, the 16th, 15th, 18th of February.
Wow.
That they came in and they basically closed us down. They took all our equipment, they took the computers, they contacted clients, and they basically just ruined us. They did a smear campaign on the studio and myself.
Now, is this the FBI?
In the paper. I don't know if it was local cops, FBI, or who, or a combination of both.
Yeah.
They flashed the badges so fast I couldn't even look at them. When I asked to look at them, they wouldn't. They did not read me Miranda rights when I was arrested. It was just not a good deal all the way around.
What were the charges, Rusty?
For not registering as a sex offender.
And they claimed you're a sex offender because of the pictures that you supposedly took in Oregon.
Yeah, and out in Oregon, I had gotten so sick that it started messing with my medication so bad that that and my sleep, to this day, I still do not get a decent night's sleep. And they would come in and they would only have to let you sleep a half an hour out of 24.
What, that's the law?
That's what they told us.
Ted, does that sound right?
That was in Oregon at Multnomah County. This is the same jail. You may remember something about the people that ended up dying in jail. I believe there were 4 of them. They died. They were beaten to death by the guards.
Wow.
And the guards had a fraternity. It was called the Brotherhood of the Strong. And they came in and they would beat these people to death in their jail cells.
Jeez, my gosh, no, I have not heard about
under
that.
the carpet.
Jeez.
This happened, I think it was 2000, 2002, somewhere in there.
Rusty, if we had some of our listeners of a mind to try to help you out financially, if they sent checks to me, there's a place where I could send them on to you, because I'm sure you don't want people to know where you are right now.
I have a post office box.
Okay, you can either have it go directly there or go to me, and then I'll send it to you, whatever you feel.
Let me make a suggestion. I don't think it's wise for people to know where Rusty is.
Okay, all right.
And I would suggest that he doesn't have a bank account, I know.
Oh. I
would suggest that they make the check payable to you, Alex, with a notation for Rusty Nelson, and that you cash him and forward him the money, the cashier's check or something.
Of course I'd do that. And
I sure appreciate that.
Well, one of the things, Rusty, let's say if you were able to have enough money coming in, could you reopen a studio, a photography studio?
I believe we could. I would really love to do it and just throw it back in their face and show them, yeah, we can get it done.
Yeah.
What would it take to do that, Rusty?
Oh, a ton of money always helps. First off, I'd have to have a building, somebody who'd be willing to rent to me.
Yeah.
We do have Yellow Pages ads that we are paying for right now, so they are coming out. I need some new equipment, or better equipment than what I had. That's what we were just in the process of buying when they shut us down. And $5,000-$10,000 would be enough for seed money to get it going.
Okay.
And a building to do it in. Town would need to be probably 25,000 people or larger.
Right.
I could do it in a big city also.
You could do it in Lincoln.
I don't know if I'd want to do Lincoln.
Yeah.
Lincoln's a strange town.
Well, Rusty,
Would you want to do it in Omaha?
Omaha would be a possibility. There's, I like New Mexico. I like the area up here. I have some ties up here now in Nebraska that, I kind of need to hold on to. So,
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, Rusty, any way that I can help, and I know that we have a lot of people out there, and I'm kind of asking them if they could see their way to send whatever, some type of a donation for you. I will definitely make sure that you get it, because I sure would like to see you get back on your feet, especially when you made a choice to follow the right path, and this is some of the ways that you have paid the price for it, too.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys helping out in that.
I sent Rusty $100 a day. It's the best I can afford.
That's great, Ted.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate it.
I've got here on an envelope. I didn't mail it, but it's going to be in the mail tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. 'Cause right now, I don't even have $1 in my billfold.
I thought you had $6 this morning. Would you just spend $6?
I had to eat.
You spend, Fritz.
With diabetes, that makes it even worse because you got to eat all the time.
Yeah.
And
So Rusty, you not only have epilepsy, but you got diabetes too?
yeah.
They've destroyed his health.
Yeah, my health is totally shot.
Hmm.
And
He's a young man.
Yeah,
He's
you're
a young
right.
man. They've destroyed his health.
Yeah, well, they will do that, Ted, as you and I both know.
Yeah, 41 years old, and I'm basically decrepit. So,
Well, Rusty, let's hope that something good will begin to happen in your life now too. And I want to thank you for coming on, because I knew it took a lot of guts. You came on in spite of your attorney recommending anyway that you do not come on and talk about this.
yeah.
But do you have any other points that you would like to share with us before you have to go?
Well, one of the things I'd like to mention is that most people do not realize what the prison system is like.
Uh-huh.
We need stronger penalties for this and that and the next thing. Knowing firsthand, first off, if you put somebody in jail, if they are in there for a week and they can hold them for 8 days for no reason whatsoever,
Right.
they can put anybody in jail for 8 days. And anyway, the prison system, you get into it, the first 30 to 60 days may be beneficial to a person. But if you go more than 2 months in jail, it is detrimental to everyone except for the guards and the people who are running the penal system, who are making their living off this.
Yeah.
It's a cash cow that they are milking, and they're milking it to death.
Sheesh.
They had a little town here in Nebraska where they bitched and moaned about spending $3 million on a new school. But they were more than happy to spend $14 million on a state-of-the-art jail that would house 40 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And that was so they would have jobs. Well, $14 million put into an account, the interest off of that would make more than what the jail would.
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Rusty, have you been following this thing in the news about this Jeff Gannon in Washington? And
I don't watch news very much of anything, but as for Jeff Gannon, the people who think it's Johnny Gosch, I don't believe you're very far off.
You think it's right?
I do.
Okay.
And if you don't believe me, look at his eyes.
Yeah.
Look very closely at the eyes, and and for what I know, firsthand. There was some things said last time I seen Johnny.
Yeah.
That it was basically put, this was out at the farmer's market in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, wouldn't it be funny if? And he basically laid out the exact same scenario as what happened.
And what's going on now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, like he said, he had the ways and means to get in to do it.
Boy.
And, you know, how many people could get in to the White House on press credentials like he had?
Yeah, but he had 200 times it got in there and he didn't even sign in.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just like Larry King going into Offutt Air Force Base, or
Yeah.
the SAC, I mean. That's Strategic Air Command.
Right.
And, you know, most people, they stop them at the guard shack and they check them out and this and that and the next thing. And Larry would drive straight through with whoever he had in the car. It didn't matter.
And they never stopped him.
They never when I was with him.
Unbelievable.
How many times were you in and out of Offutt?
I don't even know.
How many?
It was a few times.
Yeah.
This is basically what they would induct people into the MK Ultra project.
That's where the training was. Huh?
Yeah.
That was the training?
The mind control.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
who would they take in? Are these kids they kidnapped off the street?
Basically, that's who they would take in.
Wow.
And, you know, they would run them through the paces.
Yeah.
And split their personalities to where they'd hear a certain tone or a certain phrase or whatever, a certain person's voice, and they'd totally change personality.
Did you see much of that go on at Offutt, Rusty?
I've seen some of it. I've seen more of the fallout from it.
Yeah.
You know, Paul Benashi, what is it? He got 13 different personalities, isn't it, Ted?
Yeah, at least, probably more.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the things that I'd seen.
Yeah.
You know, like these kids, I didn't get a chance to really talk or get to know a lot of them. Much more than acquaintances. And you didn't dare have anything more than acquaintances when you were around Larry.
Jeez, unbelievable.
He watched you like a hawk, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the conversation on the airplane.
Oh. Larry King had a daycare center that was his little pet project in Omaha.
Jeez.
It was basically to take in orphan kids or, you know, kids that don't have a place to go.
It's the fox in the hen house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the guy who owned the building got wind that what Larry was doing. And he went in and boarded up the place, locked it up, said, "You're not getting in, period."
Wow.
Well, they called the sheriff, the police, and all these different state patrol, and nobody wanted to touch it. Well, we were on a jet, and I was sitting right next to Larry. He called Ronald Reagan direct. The place was open in 20 minutes.
Is that right? My gosh.
How do you know it's Ronnie Reagan?
Because I listened to the phone conversation through he had the receiver next to his ear next to me. And I could hear the voice.
What was that, in 88?
Yeah, that would have been, I believe, in 88.
Do you think Ronnie Reagan knew what he was all about?
Oh, yes, he knew.
Okay.
I know firsthand that he knew.
Okay.
How about the Bushes? Would you comment on that?
They know firsthand.
Okay.
They've participated, both father and son.
Yeah.
Rusty, tell the audience about when you returned to the old farmhouse after the FBI found out that you had been there and you left. Tell us about what happened to the farmhouse.
Oh, they just devastated the farmhouse. This farm was a show place in the neighborhood. It was my grandparents' farm, and Grandpa painted the buildings, kept everything in just pristine shape every year. And anyway, the house was kept immaculate. And I'd left the house, locked the door, and it was completely livable when I left, because I would pop back in and stay for a few days or whatever, and just kind of have somewhere where I could get some sense of having a home. And anyway, when I was in jail, I called home and told my brothers that I had some of these things hidden in the house.
This is in Portland.
I was in Portland, in Multnomah County Jail.
Yeah.
And anyway, I called back to Nebraska and told the brothers I had the stuff hidden in the house. And they lived down by Kansas, and they drove all the way up here. It took them about 3 or 4 hours just to drive up. And the night that it was a snowstorm, blizzard, and they still came up. And
you talking about pictures in the house?
Yeah. When they got there, there were fresh tracks, and the house had been just totally demolished. All the appliances had been shot up. They found military shell casings in the house.
My gosh.
And they called the sheriff, and the sheriff came over, and, oh, yeah, it's just kids partying in there. But they were military shell casings.
Yeah.
And brother kept a couple of them and had them traced down, find out that's where they came from. And they'd taken sledgehammer and beat the walls in. They busted up my desk. I had a set of pictures in my desk taped to the top of the drawer.
Didn't you tell your brothers that when you called them to go under the top of the drawer of the desk? Okay.
And they found them all.
So anyway, they'd been in and they had ransacked the whole place, and they'd gotten what was hidden there.
So
they knew where to go under the top of the desk.
And they were listening to your phone call in prison.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in jail, all phone conversations are recorded. All your letters are photocopied.
Wow.
And kept in a file. And they go through them. And my brother's phones were tapped. He had found bugs on his phones in his office.
Well, it's a neat government we have, I'll tell you that.
There's another area here I'd like to ask Rusty about, and that was Gary Caradori. Tell us about Gary Caradori.
Gary Caradori was the state's investigator, I believe. That was what his title was, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, he's a former Nebraska Highway Patrolman who was the state investigator for the committee that was investigating the Franklin cover-up.
Right.
Yeah.
State committee.
And so anyway, he finally tracked me down. My mom had got word to me that I really needed to talk to him, and that he'd get it set up to where, all things would be taken care of, and I'd still have a life, and, settle down. I've never been able to get a family, get married or anything, and it's the result of all this.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I proceeded. I was down in Phoenix or Albuquerque. I can't remember. I think it was Phoenix. And I drove up to Chicago because I did not want him anywhere near the neighborhood where I was at.
Yeah.
When I called him, I drove a few hours out of the way to get to talk to him from somewhere else. And anyway, we met him. I gave him the pictures and or copies pictures for a lot of them. I kept the negatives. And anyway, on the way home, I didn't know about it until a week or two later, but he flew his small plane out there.
Out of Chicago to Lincoln.
Yeah. And over Aurora, Illinois, his plane supposedly broke apart. It was blown up. They never found the back seat. They found pictures all over the place.
And they never found his briefcase either.
Yeah. And anyway, the deputy that had arrived at the scene was there just shortly. Matter of just a few minutes, and the FBI got there. And they told him that he was to keep his mouth shut. He was not to talk to anyone about that. A year later, and his wife was murdered.
Oh, man alive. Jeez.
Mm-hmm. And to this day, he will not talk to anybody about it.
Yeah. Rusty, do you, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but do you have any pictures still that you know where they are and nobody else does?
I still have pictures.
Okay.
And they've been put away for safekeeping.
Good.
But you had your life insurance policy, Rusty.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know how good of a life it's insuring, but the way it's been the last 10 years.
Rusty, it's going to change, and I hope that all of us can help you out in some way. But I want to thank you for being on with us tonight, and hopefully we can do it again, too. But I thank you very much, friend. Yeah, and God bless.
Well, right. Alex, you need to tell people where to send their donation.
Yeah, they can, I guess, send it directly to me, Ted. They have my address, and I will put something up, a link up on our website to help Rusty. And Rusty, I'll talk to you tomorrow so I can get your P.O. box so I can get it out to you.
Okay. And the other thing is, I'm going to probably be putting pictures up on eBay.
Good.
To sell pictures to hopefully bring in some money.
You got it.
And on my website, that's ourpixels.com, we're going to be putting links to a place to where if somebody sees a picture they like, they can order prints.
Okay, excellent.
And you need a network with my website, Rusty, and also Alex, you do too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to network with each other.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few hits on mine, I understand.
Good.
Yeah.
Somebody told me I was referred to on the internet 96,000 times.
Good. That's not bad, Ted.
Yeah, it's not on my website, but I mean, my name is in there. Of course, as long as I have Barbara Hartwell and Stu Webb blasting me, I guess my name's going to be out there a lot more.
Rusty, I'll be in touch, friend. You take care and God bless.
Well, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
you have a great evening now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty.
You too.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Brave young man, Ted.
Yeah, breathtaking, wasn't it?
My gosh, I mean, unbelievable. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to get Noreen Gosch on with us. So
Good.
Everybody stay where you are. I'm Alex Merklinger with Ted Gunderson, and we are going to get Noreen Gosch. So stay there and enjoy the Dixie Chick, because I love it. Oh, girls, I'm sorry. I have to pull you down because we have an important show here. We have not only my great co-host, Ted Gunderson, but we have Noreen Gosch. Noreen, thanks so much for coming back and being with us again.
Well, you're very welcome.
Oh, boy, I'm
Thank
telling
you
you.
for having me on again.
Well, you know it's always a pleasure. You heard Rusty's interview.
I did.
And, of course, you heard John's and Jim's also.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the first thing I'd like to ask and bring up, we've asked each of these men the same question, and that is, knowing what they do about Johnny and this guy, Gannon, what did they think? Noreen, each of them said they thought it was Johnny.
I know.
What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard everybody say that.
Yeah.
And there's certainly many things that point to it, but Gannon put on his website that he's not.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
He's not Johnny God. You probably was forced to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. He maybe he thought by putting that on there he could avoid the DNA test. Maybe, I don't know. Now tonight he was supposed to be on Bill Mayer's show at 10 o'clock. And I don't know if that was 10 o'clock Eastern.
Probably.
Or Central.
Yeah, probably Eastern time.
But that was on the internet tonight, and he's going to do that show.
Well, let me ask anybody out there if they happen to hear it or any reports on it. If you would email me, maybe before the show is over tonight, we could at least check into it and see what was said.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the Bill Mayer show a few times, and he really gets right to the point with a subject. So it probably was an interesting show tonight.
Well, yeah, but it goes back. If he doesn't want to, meaning Gannon, if he doesn't want to say anything and he has an agenda, that's probably the way it's going to be.
You're probably right. He, I think, is, like you said, running his own agenda.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be, and it might just simply be for self-preservation, too. Because he's in a hot spot right now.
He sure is.
Yeah, I'll say.
But he put himself there.
Yeah, that's true.
But the motivation would be interesting to learn or to know what his motivation is. I mean, I can't figure that. Initially I said, I thought maybe he was trying to get back and get even with him.
Well, that's what I thought too, Ted.
But, if he's going to get even with him, it seems like he should come forward now. But he's not coming forward now. I'm saying he's not him. No. So I don't know what's going on. And if I said I would be guessing.
Yeah. I just got an email from one of our listeners, and he said they chopped off your interview with Rusty on this leg, meaning up there of the net, when you got to the part of Oregon guards and the death of 4 inmates. Oh, well,
what's new?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who do not like some of the things I talk about, and they will do everything in their power to blow me off the air.
Well, where was he? Do you mean this one? All the internet transmissions were killed at that time?
Just part, because we're out on several different connections, and I'm not sure what you call it, but somehow they're able to knock down one of those connections, and it cuts off a whole bunch of listeners. Remember, we got listeners in all these different countries around, so we'll see.
Well, that's typical. That's average. That's the way it works.
Right.
These people have all the power. Not all the power. We have the power from God, but they have the technological experience and expertise and the money.
Yeah.
And they own many of the big corporations, including some of the phone companies, I'm sure.
Oh, they sure do. My heavens, yes. Yep.
And I had one of my associates recently called his daughter, and instead of him getting hold of his daughter, there was this blood-curdling scream on there. So he hung up and he called again, and the daughter answered,
Jeez.
They're game players.
Yep, they sure are.
Noreen, did you have any response from your interview the other night?
Yes, I've gotten a great many emails from people that have listened to the show. Well, in fact, all of the shows that you've done this week, Alex.
Oh, that's great.
Ted. And one lady in particular, I forwarded that email to you. Did you get it?
Yes, I did. I did get it.
It was a woman who was a victim of sexual abuse, and she had written to me saying how thankful she was for the shows that Alex has done this week.
Good.
And to bring this out, because it's really been helpful.
Pat yourself on the back, Alex.
Well, yeah, but it's not me, Ted. It's people like you and Noreen and.
Well, but if you didn't provide the form,
you done it.
It wouldn't be done.
Well, thanks, guys.
And
but
there are people out there that are hearing this and identifying with it, and it means a lot to them to be able to hear the truth and to know that they're not alone.
Noreen, what do some of the other emails say?
Many of them are just saying that they're behind us, they believe what all we have shared about Johnny, the Franklin Credit Union cover-up, all of the information that we've brought out in this week, and how people can see how it ties together. And they wonder how on earth these young people who have been the victims, you know, get on with their lives, survive their life, and, you know, and what becomes of them later. There's a great deal of concern out there for these kids.
It has to have a devastating effect on their lives.
Mm-hmm.
It would be.
Well, those that live.
I was just going to say that, Noreen. Yeah, because it's one thing when we talk about, you know, how it has screwed up so many lives, but of the thousands and thousands of kids that have been kidnapped, how many are still alive?
Mm-hmm.
How many have they? You know, it's beyond imagination when you hear somebody like Rusty Nelson talk to us, and even getting from John DeCamp and Jim Rothstein about the number of kids, and they kill them, and they do it for either satanic ritual or to make a movie out of. I mean, this is beyond imagination.
And then they sell the movie.
Yeah. God.
Well, there was an article written about 10 or 12 years ago. I think I said this earlier on one of these shows, Alex. They estimate 2,500 children a year are kidnapped and murdered. But I think it's higher than that.
I do too. Yeah, I do.
Because the cult alone, satanic cult, human sacrifices alone is going to be more than that.
Jeez.
What did some of the other emails have to say, Noreen?
A lot of people have expressed their prayers for me, for Johnny, especially in this latest situation with Gannon, and whether or not he might be Gannon. And if he's not Gannon, then continuation of prayers and good wishes wherever he's at. But I think the majority of people that have written to me believe that it is him by what they've put in their emails.
Well,
and a lot of them have expressed when is there going to be the DNA test? Has that been agreed upon? And all of that. And we don't have that yet.
I don't think he's going to do it. Do you?
I don't think so either.
No.
What? How many emails did you receive, roughly?
I think I've probably gotten about 10 or 15, and some of them did it in a straight email to me, and some of them did it in the feedback section of my website, where you have a chance to just type in a little paragraph or whatever you want based on the information from the website as well. And it's a convenient way to do it, but they had also watched this show listened to this show because we had put information on the website letting people know that these shows were coming up. And that helps get the word out there because I get a lot of hits on my website.
I bet you do. Did you have any negative emails?
Not one. Not one.
And they don't dare stick their head up.
And a lot of times when there's a cross-section of people with, thoughts and opinions, sometimes you'll get a comment or two where they don't agree, but that this didn't happen this time. People have been very glued to the radio, actually, to hear all facets of this story.
Alex, let me ask you about your emails.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about them.
Well, I'll tell you real quick. Right now, I have in emails 1,814 up there.
Goodness.
Well, we get a tremendous amount every day, and so many of them. I probably will get 100 or more a day in reference to the show. I'm talking about Johnny and people throwing support our way and saying, because I said, because a lot of people have tried to have me not do this because they're either afraid for me because of all the strange things. I mean, look at all the people that have been killed so far, just people who have wanted to open this up before the public, and all of a sudden they end up dead.
Well, some of them have opened it up and ended up dead.
Right. So many people around the world are very concerned. I said, well, I'm sorry. I've got to do it, though. I mean, because this is the worst thing that is facing humanity today, and it's so all pervasive, and it starts from the satanic belief. I mean, how can these people turn away from God and idolize Satan with the agenda that the Satanist movement has, and then just start to bring that down, because the pedophilia and the kidnapping of the children is only one part of what the satanic movement is all about.
That's right.
And people don't want to know it, and they try everything they can to either turn away from it or pretend I didn't hear that or something. And
now, you haven't had time to read 1814, but
no.
I assume you skimmed through them. You see any negative ones in there?
No. I've never had a negative one about it.
Don't you find, too, that a lot of people really want to know what they can do to help?
Well, this is why, Noreen, I asked you to come back on with us, because this is something I think all of us would like. I mean, I just cry out inside, what can we do? You know, because we all over the world, this is not just a problem in Nebraska. This is not just a problem in the United States or even North America. This happens worldwide. I mean, look after the tsunami down in Sumatra, in that whole area, and the people that were grabbing these little children, and they were going to sell them or put them into the same program that Johnny and other kids have been put in. So this has got to stop. You know, Jesus said, "Suffer not the little children."
Well, I know Jim Rothstein and I were talking about it today, and he, too, and I think it was mentioned on the show by John DeCamp and maybe even Jim the night he was on, about the need for a task force.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
To be given the opportunity and the, leverage and everything to act, but that takes money there again. But people are going to have to speak out and do something, because it's getting out of control. It's completely out of control.
Well, do you think it's getting worse, Noreen, or?
I think it is.
Do you really? Gosh.
It's being publicized more, that's for sure. But on the other hand, there are more kids that seem to be taken, and there's much more news coverage on it, too.
Yeah. Noreen, you have to speak up, remember.
There's much more news coverage on it than ever before. And that brings it to our attention. And I know some people say, well, it's only because it's in the news that you hear about it that you think there's more. But I disagree. I think there are more cases than we've ever seen before.
Just working with the increase in population around the world, you could really see where this is exactly what could happen.
And if we don't value the lives of small children, young children, then what kind of a nation will we become? We're fast on our way.
Yeah.
And I think that we're in a state of moral decay.
Definitely. Well, the children who are molested now will end up being perpetrators themselves. And it'll magnify itself. And that's been well documented.
Yeah.
And
do you think there's any connection between any type of, just for lack of a better thought here, any type of chromosome damage that would be found in pedophiles?
Well, that's a good
that
one.
might be derived from the heavy drug culture in our country?
You know, I don't know that we could document that, but I'd say
I don't think it's been documented, but I think it's worth exploring.
I think it's a very, very solid and good observation.
There's such heavy use of drugs, and that's well known, and we're into our second and third and probably more generation of drug abuse offspring.
Yeah.
And if we have mutated any form of chromosome damage, then that might account for some of the activity that we're seeing, because there are pedophiles who are younger and younger than ever before, too.
Wow.
Teenagers.
Yeah.
And a pedophile who begins practicing pedophilia, so to speak, they can, in their lifetime, molest upwards of 300 children.
Absolutely.
Because they will continue to molest till they are too old and feeble to walk.
Jeez, my gosh.
They can do it as very old men or as very young men, and anything in between as far as an age bracket.
And the men are not necessarily the only ones. We have women doing it too.
We have women doing it too.
Yeah.
But the percentages are greater in the men.
The male population.
Yeah, the male population.
Hmm.
Well, it all goes back to the Illuminati/Satanic movement in this country.
Jeez.
And
but when you get to the point where there's a human life is not valued, then you've got real problems in a society.
no, that's it.
And we're seeing evidence of that with the young people. When I think back to all that I've been through since day one of Johnny's kidnapping, and what that young man had to go through,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is a horrible, horrendous thing for any family to have to endure.
Noreen, have you heard, or maybe Ted, have you heard what is this program, what's entailed in this program for once they kidnap a child, what do they go through? How long does the programming last? I mean, because I know they torture them, they get them onto drugs, they molest them. I mean, what are some of the
sleep deprivation, food deprivation, hypnosis, a combination of all of that.
Drugs, the sexual abuse, and then once they have them indoctrinated to a point where the kids just don't know from what, then they force them to commit a felony, usually, because that is also leverage, and it puts the fear factor into them that they could never run off and go to the police for help,
and
because they let them know, well, you committed a felony.
Yeah, and oftentimes that felony is murder.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that,
culture.
Yeah, but
that's correct.
They put the kids, they bring their children in for a human sacrifice. And I've talked to a number of survivors who told me this. And they put the knife above the victim's whatever, and the body in a particular location. It's all part of the ritual. And the child's hand is on the knife, and they tell the child to stash it or to go forward with it, to stab the person. And the children don't do it. So an adult comes along and puts his hand over top of hers and stabs the person. And then they tell the kid, see what you've done. And then that's where the guilty complex comes in. And that's where they blackmail the kids. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Noreen?
Well, that's exactly what Paul Benassi described.
Is that right?
And I've talked to probably, I guess in my 25 years I've interviewed over 200 of these survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Really? My gosh.
I heard Rusty make reference to this federal trial or court case in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1999. I was in that courtroom when Rusty told that whole story to the judge.
What was that, Noreen?
I beg your pardon?
When was that? The story?
That was when Paul Benassi sued and won against Larry King.
Yeah.
And I was in the courtroom, and that was when I met Rusty for the first time. And I listened to him relate just about everything that he did tonight on the radio for the judge.
Hmm.
Is there anything he said in the courtroom he didn't say tonight?
Only the recent material, just about Gannon and anything that would be added since 1999. But everything that he related tonight about how it all worked, the organization, how Larry King interacted and treated him. He also spent time talking about how he got into this in the first place.
Yeah.
Who the person was that introduced him to Larry King.
Soto, he said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us about Soto. Did you mention Soto the other night, Noreen?
I didn't.
You want to tell us about him?
Well, he was a private investigator in Des Moines. And Rusty and Paul Benassi both have identified him. Rusty identified him as the man who introduced him to Larry King and that he was part of this whole network. Paul Benassi picked his photograph out of a lineup of photographs and told Roy Stevens, the private investigator, that that is the man who brought the photographs of Johnny to a motel room the night before the kidnapping and said, this is the boy that we're going to take tomorrow. And on the back of the photograph, which was an 8x10, there was a diagram and an outline of our house and the street where Johnny would walk up to the corner and then how he would start his route. And Paul Benassi saw all of this, and he described this man, the way he acted, the way he dressed. He even described his after shave lotion or cologne that he always wore. And this was just from seeing a black and white picture of the man. And he identified him as Soda, and he said the kids all called him Soda Pop.
Who was in that room, do you know?
Which room?
When Soda showed the picture, this is the boy we're going to kidnap tomorrow.
In the motel room,
Benassi said that Emilio was there, another man named Tony, and then Soda and Benassi, and then there was another kid, and he said his name was Mike.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what happened to Michael. Nobody knows his last name.
Sometimes he called him Mikey.
Yeah.
And he was there too. But
how old was Paul at that time?
Paul is about 4 years older than Johnny, so Paul would have been about 16 going on 17 at the time of the kidnapping.
You know, it's draining, isn't it? I mean, you get so emotionally involved and you hear the stories, and for a normal person, this is so far outside of their normal thinking process that it almost freaks people out.
Well, it does, and I can remember back to the morning of the kidnapping, and Johnny was missing, and, we didn't know what had happened, and I started calling the newspaper manager, and I got the names of all the kids that were at the corner that morning. Yeah. I called each one of the houses, and I started hearing this story about this man in a car, and he stopped Johnny, and a second man who followed him down the street, and the slamming of the car door, and the car screeching the tires as it took off. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, it was just like spinning a nightmare right before me. I thought, what's happened here? Your mind can't catch up fast enough after something like this happens. And thank God we had witnesses. Because in a lot of kidnappings, you have a bicycle that they find or a wagon, and nobody saw anything. So at least we had witnesses, so I am thankful tremendously for that.
Right. What happened to the latest witness, Noreen, that's come forward in the last 2 or 3 weeks? Did anybody do anything with that? Anybody take affidavits or statements or anything?
We haven't done anything with it just yet. The young man, I'm not so sure. He still lives in West Des Moines. His father still lives in the same house. And the father is the one that was questioned by a news team that was here doing the story from another city. And they came to my house to...
This is 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. And they came to my house to interview me after they had been up at the location where Johnny was kidnapped and had talked to this man, this boy's father. So when they came here, they began relating the whole story. I said, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because this is not what was released to the public. And so I told them that. And then that same news team drove up to Minnesota to interview Jim Rothstein. And they told him the same thing. That the father said, oh, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And that's what we told the police. But the police told a different story and told us to keep quiet.
Wow.
So, you see, we had even a further eyewitness that actually saw Johnny being stuffed in the car. And like I said, he just described him being shot with something like a stun gun.
Have you talked to the family?
I haven't gone up there yet, no.
Okay.
And the reason we waited is because it might be better if it was handled in more of an official capacity than just me.
Yeah, but who can you get to do that? Because the it seem like the police don't want to cooperate?
I'm not going to involve the police. We'll get it through some other manner.
Just through a professional.
We'll get an affidavit or something signed.
Yeah.
No, I don't run anything through the police.
No. Is John DeCamp aware of this new witness?
I did tell him about it on the phone.
Boy.
Shortly after it happened. And see, that's very important. That, you know, just the fact that there was the eyewitness. And,
well, the Rothstein or somebody of Rothstein's experience or my experience should go interview these people and take statements.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're kind of waiting for, because I don't want... I didn't want a bunch of people charging up there.
No, you're right.
Scaring the guy off. And now that this whole thing has erupted with Gannon, I don't want them to become so afraid again that they won't talk.
No, you're right. It does, either Rothstein or I should go interview these people.
And see, that's why I didn't go charging over there.
Good idea.
I just thought, no, it's probably better if it's handled in a different manner.
But you got to have a professional do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. And one that's prepared to take an affidavit right on the spot.
Absolutely.
Now, Noreen, let's say you interview, or Ted goes and interviews the father, and the father says all the things that happened, and wherever the son is, and I don't know, but let's say the son is also
interviewed. It would be best if
interviewed.
we found the son, because he's the one that saw it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Rothstein and I should both go interview him together.
Well, that'd be all right. But what would it mean to the case? It would open up a lawsuit that you could go after the town, right?
If they would be willing to go on record and say that they told the police such and such, and the police told a different story, that, I'm not an attorney, but I would think that would be grounds for a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
I would think so, sure.
Because that would be falsifying, information, and based on that, the FBI would not come into the case because they said we had no crime. And the police chief kept saying, well, we have no crime because nobody saw your boy being stuffed into a car.
And yet, it was the police.
And, if that police chief was still alive, upon hearing this the other day, I'm not so sure I wouldn't have gone right to his house.
Is he dead now?
Yeah, he died of a heart attack.
Well, they probably killed him.
I don't know.
How long ago did he die?
About 2.5 years.
Oh, so it's not that long ago.
No. And when he died, it was just kind of funny because the newspaper called me the afternoon afterwards and wanted me to make a statement. And told me he was dead. And I said, no comment. So then they called back a little later and they wanted me to make a statement, and I said, no comment.
Good for you.
And then they finally called back a third time. And they said, well, we would like you to make a statement about his death. And I said, what part about no comment do you not understand?
Yeah, right. Excellent.
And you know what the reporter said?
What?
He said, well, damn, he said, we can't get anybody to say anything nice about him either.
Oh, God.
That's what he said. And I said, well, I guess you have to consider the source. And I wouldn't say anything else.
Good.
Because,
if I did and began to lunch out with the truth, all they would remember is, oh, Noreen Gosch spoke ill of the dead. They would not have believed what I had to say.
Really?
Noreen, what was the TV news crew? Where were they from?
From Waterloo, Iowa. It was Dave Roberts from KWWL, and they did a very successful show. They did the interviews here. They talked about Gannon. They talked to this boy's father. They drove up to Minnesota to see Rothstein.
Oh.
And then they ran it. And then they told Jim that they were going to, this was after the story ran, that they were going to do some kind of a follow-up piece. And I don't know what that will be.
Did anybody nationally pick up on it?
And where?
Nationally.
Not yet.
What about the Des Moines area?
I'm thinking, though, that if they do another story, and I guess this young reporter's boss was really behind him and very supportive, especially when they found out that there had been a little bit of a fib, shall we say?
A little bit of a fib?
I'm trying to be generous.
I know you are. That's, my gosh.
And see, that's the thing right now, and for a very long time now.
Yeah.
As these are coming out.
Boy.
Yes, it upsets me. It upsets me a lot.
Yeah.
But I can't afford
Hmm.
to allow it to blow my circuits.
True. You can't.
This many years into it,
Yep.
it's detrimental to a person's health.
Yeah, I agree.
And I can't afford to have my blood pressure being shooting over the top over every little thing that comes in. It just has to be handled. And then we figure out a plan. But I really try to remain extremely calm. And that's for my welfare, too, because I wouldn't have lasted this long had I just gone berserk over every little thing.
It's true.
I can be more effective when I'm calm.
You know, you would think that somebody besides the Waterloo TV station would do a story on this.
Well, Des Moines is not wanting to do much more. A lot of times they will respond and do something after it's been done in another area. And that's been just the last couple of years on the story.
Is Jim Gannon still working with the Des Moines Register?
Oh, no, he moved on from Des Moines, and I think he moved to either New York or Washington and was doing something in the media there. I'm not sure what it was, but he went on to greener pastures.
That was his reward for putting clamps on your story.
See, one of the things that I've been getting a lot of emails about, there's a local talk show here, Jan Michelson show.
Huh.
And I've been on his show, and it goes pretty wide range through the Iowa area. A lot of people listen to it. And a lot of people have been writing me, telling me that they have contacted the station, asking Jan to put me on the air about this Gannon issue. And people are getting very frustrated because he won't do it, or he hasn't done it. He hasn't even called me to do it. And the listeners in this Iowa area who have been listening to your show, Alex, have called the local guy here and said, well, it's everywhere else. Why aren't you putting her on the air? And they haven't.
Yeah.
And so then they're speculating that maybe he was told not to, or I'm not sure what the reason is.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
But I will say this. When I was on his show, after my book came out, he was very complimentary about the book, and he said that he and his wife both read it like in 2 nights. Each one of them had the book for one night.
Yeah.
And while we were on the air, and it was live, he said, well, lady, he said, you really have a lot of gall.
Really?
He said, you accused Barney Frank and Craig Spence of all those things that they supposedly did in Washington, D.C. Where do you get off doing that? And I said, every single bit of it was a proven fact.
Yeah, right.
And I said,
exactly.
if you went back and researched the 92 articles in the Washington Times from the year 1988 through 1989, I said, you would have the same information I do. And I said, I guess maybe you didn't do your homework before this interview.
Yeah, right. Oh,
Who was this?
Jan Michelson.
Oh, this was Jan.
Yeah. And he laughed. He says, well, I knew you'd have an answer for that. But he and I get along fine, and I told him, I said, anything I put in that book is what we've researched and we found to be true. I said, I didn't put in things that had not already been established because I didn't want legal problems.
Then you ended up a legal problem with that other character.
Yeah, but nothing over...
Nothing over what you put in the book.
No.
Wow.
No.
Would you want to comment on that? Would you rather not?
Well, I might as well.
Sure, you betcha.
There was a man that assisted, and he kept calling and wanting to assist with the book. And he did some research because he owned some books that had information about MK Ultra, which I was going to include in the book. And so that's about all he provided. You see, I had quite a few of the chapters of my book written. I had the first 2 written by 1984. And what I would do is write and take from my notes things that were happening. And I would write it all up in story form so I wouldn't forget it, number one, and so there would be an accurate record of it, number two. Well, this guy had written books also, but they were mostly stories about, and books with a lot of pictures. And it was not a book like this one. And after the book was published, or he was living in Missouri, and he kept wanting to be a part of this project. And I said to him, well, what's in it for you? Well, he says, I just want to see the truth get out. I don't want anything. And when he came to Des Moines, he would come over and would work a couple of days a week. And the rest of the time, I don't know what he did. But I was working in my job as well while I was still writing the book. And got the book published. He came to my home about 3 months after the book was out and demanded $25,000 in cash for his assistance.
What? Jeez.
Yeah. He claims that he put in 1,200 hours on the book. It was just a complete farce.
Oh, my God.
And he claimed that the whole idea for the book was his. And many times he tried to, when we would be working on something, he would keep trying to tell me, well, it has to be this way, it has to be that way. And I'd remind him repeatedly,
wow, it's
my son, my story, and my book. And a couple of times I told him to get out of my home.
Oh, my heavens.
And that he was no longer a part of anything. And that it was my son, my story, and my book. Well, he then filed a lawsuit against me for $25,000. Now, I had to borrow the money to get that book published. And I was working 2 part-time jobs while I was doing the book, and then taking on the project of doing a book at the same time. And throughout the entire investigation on Johnny's case, with the exception of the last year when I was writing the book, I had a full-time 8-hour job a day, plus 2 part-time jobs that I would do throughout the week. So I was working days and nights, and I was working weekends. I didn't have anything like a day off for years and years. And the book, you know, the expenses that we've had on Johnny's case for detectives and all of the money that has had to go out for just doing the things that the police didn't do came to close to $750,000.
Oh my gosh, Noreen.
Yeah. And we didn't get big donations and things like that. Not at all. We did fundraisers like garage sales. They did bake sales. The neighbors pitched in and did a lot of that type of fundraisers.
Yeah.
People threw benefit dances. There was a few of those. And then all the rest of it was either from what I could raise with my extra jobs, or when I was on the national speaking circuit, every speaking fee that I got went into the bank to pay detectives. And you see, that was all money that I shouldn't have had to come up with, but I did it because the police were not helping me and the FBI wouldn't commit the case. Few people realize what it has cost me to try and find my son. I mean, it has been 22 years of just absolute stress.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean stress of losing him, stress of, are you going to have enough money to keep it going? And that would just give me nightmares at night. Like, what if you run out of money and you can't keep it going? You're going to have to give up working to find your boy.
Yeah, right.
And so that's why I always kept working extra jobs. I had my daytime office job as an office manager. And then I worked for a fragrance company, and then I taught classes at night.
Wow.
Noreen, you'd be interested in this. Tell us about, and when you tell this story, and I have a follow-up to it, about the throwing the coffee cup at the FBI agent.
Yes.
What?
6 months after Johnny was kidnapped, another boy from Des Moines was kidnapped from the high school parking lot where he was attending school. And the kidnappers jumped into his Eldorado Cadillac and took the boy, and then made a call to the parents on the kid's car phone for ransom demand. Now, it so happened that that family was very wealthy. The grandfather invented the vending machine. Does that give you a clue?
Yeah.
As to how much money that they're worth? Okay. So the FBI jumped on that one. They brought in agents from Quantico, Virginia. They had SWAT teams. They had everything. They got the kid back in 36 hours.
Wow.
Unharmed. Well, the next day, a representative from the West Des Moines Police, and then a man named Herb Hawkins, who was a special agent in charge from the Omaha office of the FBI, plus our local FBI agent here, all came to our house. I think they just wanted to gloat about, solving the other case.
Yeah.
And I was just making coffee, and they came in, and Herb Hawkins said to me, "Oh, man," he says, "we really had to work on that case. There was a human life at stake." And by this time, they had moved to the table, and they were sitting down, and Herb was sitting in Johnny's chair at the table.
Yeah.
And I was pouring the coffee and putting the mugs on a tray to carry over to the table. And when he said that there was a human life at stake, I said, "Well, what do you call my son?" I said, "You all wouldn't enter Johnny's case. You still haven't. What is this about a human life in the other case?" And he said, "Mrs. Gosch, there's something you don't understand. The other family were prominent people.
Oh, my gosh.
They are very wealthy. We had to start looking for their boy right away. And that did it.
Yeah,
I put down the coffee pot. I picked up a full mug of coffee, and I hurled the cup across the room and missed Herb Hawkins' face by 1/4 of an inch.
The whole cup or just the coffee?
The whole cup.
Wow.
Well, they jumped up and started yelling at me and all sorts of things, and he wanted to know. He says, "I can see you're overwrought. What can I do for you?" I said, "Get out of my house." I said, "If you're not going to look for my boy," I said, "step aside because I'm coming through."
Good for you.
And I threw them out of the house. Well, then, Ken Wooden, who had investigated pedophiles for many, many years, used to work for CBS, was a friend of mine. A few days later, he called me, and he said, "Hey, babe, what is this I hear about you throwing a coffee cup at Herb Hawkins?" And I said, "How did you hear about it?"
Yeah.
He said, "Well, I was at the White House for a dinner with Ronald Reagan, and William Webster, head of the FBI, and some other dignitaries were coming in. And he says, I was sitting there wearing my Johnny Gosch button on my suit, and he said William Webster was very disgusted."
Noreen, you'd be interested in this. Tell us about, and when you tell this story, then I have a follow-up to it, about the throwing the coffee cup at the FBI agent.
Yes.
What?
6 months after Johnny was kidnapped, another boy from Des Moines was kidnapped from the high school parking lot where he was attending school. And the kidnappers jumped into his Eldorado Cadillac and took the boy, and then made a call to the parents on the kid's car phone for ransom demand. Now, it so happened that that family was very wealthy. The grandfather invented the vending machine. Does that give you a clue?
Yeah.
as to how much money that they're worth? Okay. So the FBI jumped on that one. They brought in agents from Quantico, Virginia. They had SWAT teams. They had everything. They got the kid back in 36 hours.
Wow.
Unharmed. Well, the next day, a representative from the West Des Moines Police and then a man named Herb Hawkins, who was a special agent in charge from the Omaha office of the FBI, plus our local FBI agent here, all came to our house. I think they just wanted to gloat about, solving the other case.
Yeah.
And I was just making coffee, and they came in, and Herb Hawkins said to me, "Oh, man," he says, "we really had to work on that case. There was a human life at stake." And by this time, they had moved to the table, and they were sitting down, and Herb was sitting in Johnny's chair at the table.
Yeah.
And I was pouring the coffee and putting the mugs on a tray to carry over to the table. And when he said that there was a human life at stake, I said, "Well, what do you call my son?" I said, "You all wouldn't enter Johnny's case. You still haven't. What is this about a human life in the other case?" And he said, "Mrs. Gosch, there's something you don't understand. The other family were prominent people.
Oh, my gosh.
They are very wealthy. We had to start looking for their boy right away." And that did it.
Yeah,
I put down the coffee pot. I picked up a full mug of coffee, and I hurled the cup across the room and missed Herb Hawkins' face by 1/4 of an inch.
The whole cup or just the coffee?
The whole cup.
Wow.
Well, they jumped up and started yelling at me and all sorts of things, and he wanted to know. He says, "I can see you're overwrought. What can I do for you?" I said, "Get out of my house." I said, "If you're not going to look for my boy," I said, "step aside because I'm coming through."
Good for you.
And I threw them out of the house. Well, then, Ken Wooden, who had investigated pedophiles for many, many years, used to work for CBS. He was a friend of mine. A few days later, he called me, and he said, "Hey, babe, what is this I hear about you throwing a coffee cup at Herb Hawkins?" And I said, "How did you hear about it?"
Yeah.
He said, "Well, I was at the White House for a dinner with Ronald Reagan, and William Webster, head of the FBI, and some other dignitaries were coming in." And he says, "I was sitting there wearing my Johnny Gosch button on my suit," and he said William Webster was very disgusted and upset when he got to the meeting. And he said, "Well, I just had to deal with some agent out in Omaha because some crazy woman in Iowa threw a cup of coffee at him." And Ken Wooden picked up, kind of perked up when he heard Iowa, and he says, "Well, what was her name?"
Yeah.
And Webster said, "Noreen Gosch."
Oh, my gosh.
And my friend Ken said in front of the president, he said, "If that woman lost control for even 30 seconds, it's because your agent said something that was deplorable.
Good.
He got out of line, or she never would have reacted that way."
Good.
He says, "I know her."
And Noreen and Ted, we're out of time.
Okay.
That's a real quick note.
Yes, sir.
I know Herb Hawkins. I sent him a copy of your book, Noreen.
You sent who a copy?
Herb Hawkins a copy of your book.
You did?
And never heard back from him.
I'm not surprised.
And I want to thank both of you for being on. We'll go a minute over, but thanks so much, and we cannot let this die. Ted, you and I are going to be in touch a lot. Noreen, anytime you have any information or hear anything or have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
too. God
Thanks,
bless
Noreen.
both of you.
Good night.
Ted, I'll call you tomorrow, too.
Okay.
Okay, good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And everybody, that was two fine people. I'll see you Monday. I'm Alex Merklinger. This is Mysteries of the Mind on the Millennium Radio Network. Have a great weekend, my friends. God bless us all because we need it.